Have you ever wanted someone to understand you so bad that you found yourself yelling at them or even crying or just getting angry that you're being misunderstood? Or have you ever wanted someone to validate you? Seeking validation and understanding from the outside is a bag of tricks. And I'm going to help you walk through that bag. But understand this is very common for a trauma survivor to seek understanding and validation from the outside. However, you should never seek validation from another person. If they give you validation, take it, absorb it, enjoy it, bathe in the validation, but never seek the validation of another person. That's really important. We should only look for validation internally. When it comes to understanding, though, sometimes we need a person to understand something. That's the essence of communication, is to transfer thoughts. But it's important to kind of help ourselves through the development we weren't able to get to growing up with a narcissistic parent, or growing up with a borderline parent, or in an abusive, neglectful, emotionally abandoning household. And so at one point you would have come to this conclusion as an adolescent. No one cares, or nobody cares about me, or people don't truly care. Now, those are bleak outlooks, and it's not totally accurate. However, that outlook of nobody cares or people don't care is adaptive to get you to where you want to go, which is a more sophisticated understanding of the world around you. It's not true that nobody cares, but it is true that people have a limited capacity to care about you and your concerns. There's only so much they can do for another person, because each person needs to care primarily about their own needs, concerns, and feelings, so that they can't fully take on your needs, concerns, and feelings. Does that make sense? Just on a very logical, scientific level, we are limited. We only have so much time, energy, space, mental capacity to be able to care for another person's feelings. So you have to recognize, when it comes to you and the other people you're in a relationship with, that person has a limited capacity to actually be able to care for me, or about what it is that I care about. And that's not wrong. That's not bad, and that's not selfish. That's just reality. Still, if we had a good mom as a child, then we had an experience as a baby where that mother would sacrifice anything for our well-being. She would sacrifice her body, all of her space, all of her time, all of her energy to that newborn child. And so if you experience that as a baby, you may have grown up to still be seeking that type of love that you once had. If you did not experience it, all the more so, you may feel that lack for the rest of your life until you get that trauma addressed, that need for someone to become engulfed with you, for someone to sacrifice and give their all for you, to really understand you, to care about you and be concerned with you in the deepest way. And so regardless of what we had in childhood, we would still have to reach a point where we recognize that there's not going to be another phase of a mother figure caring for us on the level that a mother cares for a newborn. We reach a point of independence, and that independence needs to continue for as long as possible. And in that state, we can show care for others, and we can definitely care for ourselves, but we will be limited in how much we can care for other people. So recognize that that person who you're trying to get to understand you is limited in their ability to be able to fully understand you. And so what's happening is we're seeking an external locus of control, meaning we look to the outside for what's going to make us feel and be safe and be better and be validated and soothe us. That's an external locus of control. Instead of looking to the outside for all of those things, We need to learn to have an internal locus of control, which is to look to the inside for what's going to make us safe and make us feel good and make us be soothed and help us to feel complete. The love, it all needs to come from an internal locus of control. So we actually have to stop seeking it from the outside. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't try to help someone to understand something. But if you think about it, people are really not fully capable of understanding another person's experience. If you think about it, every human is autonomous, like they're isolated on their own. Even when you're standing right next to another person, even if you're hugging them, there's only still so much you can understand about their experience. Our brains don't allow us to just completely come into another person. So some trauma survivors think they have this ability to read how another person feels because they have hypervigilance, and they convince themselves they can do this in their childhood as a way of staying safe because they had unpredictable caregivers. But now that you're an adult and you're no longer under the care of another human, let's recognize the facts. We don't know what people are thinking. We don't know what they're feeling. We don't know what their intentions are. We can make guesses, draw inferences. We can read body language cues, but they can easily throw us off, right? They can easily throw us off if we're honest about that situation. You're batting 50-50 on your ability to determine someone based on their vibe, right? Ultimately, the best tool we have is language. And so if someone gives us language, then we can hope to understand them. But even that's not foolproof because they could lie or deceive us with their language, or we could just misinterpret what we're hearing. So all that being said, there's really no such thing as total understanding. So why are you seeking it? Well, maybe because you didn't realize that it wasn't possible. But once you realize that the total understanding from person to person doesn't really exist, then you can be grateful for the little bits of relation that we have, where we relate to another person, where we feel ourselves on the same wavelength as another person. Just be grateful when you have a moment like that. But don't seek it and to the degree that you become distressed when you're not receiving it. Understand that ultimately, if you're in a situation and you want another person to understand for their own sake, because there's just something they don't understand, it is okay to try to communicate to them, but you have to emotionally disconnect from the outcome. Whether you get them to understand or not, you can't allow that to control your emotions and how you feel. But if you're going to communicate, make sure that anyone you're trying to make understand is someone who's really trying to understand. Make sure it's a person who's really seeking the understanding. They're looking for it. They desire it. Don't waste your breath, your energy on someone that's not trying to understand, but is really just yelling at you or arguing with you or trying to teach you something. So let's sum things up with this illustration. What would you think of a person who is a full-grown adult but is distressed that nobody is feeding them, or that maybe one particular person in their life isn't feeding them? I don't mean providing food. I mean feeding, like taking a spoon and putting the food into their mouth. There was a time where all of us were being fed as babies, but it's expected that we grow up and we learn how to feed ourselves, right? Of the food that's available, it's important that you know how to get it on a spoon or a fork and put it into your own mouth. So being distressed that someone doesn't feed you is arrested development. So is being distressed that someone else doesn't love you. Being distressed that someone else doesn't understand you. Being distressed that someone else isn't validating you. All of that is arrested development. Because there was a time where there was someone interpreting every cry, trying to figure out what we needed, swaddling us in a blanket, and it felt great. But we're not at that time anymore. We're grown-ups. And so it's arrested development to become overly concerned, distressed that another person doesn't understand you because they really don't have the capacity to anyway. So let's update our viewpoint now with this lesson. Recognize that we don't need to look to the outside for all of this understanding. We need to seek instead to understand ourselves.